every single day. Until one day, you're not just listening to it. You're answering it. They say temptation doesn't always come in the form you expect. Sometimes, it doesn't come with red flags or warning signs. Sometimes, it walks into your life wearing comfort, familiarity. It shows up with a smile that feels like home. And before you even realize it, you're not safe anymore. I was never planning to feel what I felt. I didn't wake up that morning thinking, today's the day I betray everything I've built. But sometimes, it only takes one look, one word, one moment, for your whole life to tilt just enough to let something in. And once it's in, God, it's hard to let go. This isn't just a story about infidelity. It's a story about need. About feeling seen after years of invisibility. About being touched when you've forgotten what affection even feels like. It's about the slow ache of being beside someone who stopped noticing you a long time ago. And the sudden rush of being noticed too much by someone who never should have looked at you that way. I know how this sounds. I know the judgment, the labels, the assumptions. But I also know someone out there, you maybe, knows what it's like to feel like a ghost in your own life. To go to bed every night next to someone who doesn't see you, doesn't hear you, doesn't miss you because they haven't truly looked at you in years. This story? It's messy. It's real. And it's going to take you places you might not be ready to go. But I promise you, if you stay with me, if you listen closely, you'll understand why I did what I did. Even if you don't agree with it. Even if you think you'd never do it. And who knows? By the end of it, you might realize you've been carrying your own version of this story all along. So, before we dive in, I'll just say this. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Because the stories we tell here, they don't just entertain you. They haunt you. Just like this one will. My name is Camille. I'm 36. And before all this, I would have told you I had a good life. A nice house. A decent marriage. 2 healthy kids. The kind of life people scroll past on Instagram and think she must be happy. But you know what no one talks about? The kind of loneliness that can live right in the middle of all that. My husband, Marcus. He used to be warm. Years ago. He used to trace his fingers down my spine just to say he loved how I breathed. Now, he barely glances at me when he walks in the door. He's always working emails, deadlines, travel. When he is home, he's either glued to his laptop or asleep on the couch with the TV humming in the background. The only thing he touches lately is his phone. And me? I've become part of the furniture. Quiet. Reliable. Always there. We haven't had a real conversation in months. And don't get me started on intimacy. It's like living next to a ghost of the man I married, flesh and blood, but no heartbeat where it matters. I tried at first. Date nights, lingerie, sitting beside him just to hold his hand. But you can't reach someone who's already left you emotionally. You just get tired of trying. And so, I stopped. I still cook his meals, fold his clothes, smile for the kids. But inside, it's hollow. Then Darren moved in. Marcus's younger brother. 29. Funny in that easy, reckless kind of way. The kind of man who lights up a room without even trying. He said he needed a place to crash. His breakup had left him with nowhere to go. Marcus offered our guest room without even asking me. Just like that, Darren was in our space. At first, I barely noticed him. Just another mouth at the dinner table. But he noticed me. I don't mean in a creepy, obvious way. He just saw me. The first week he was here, he made a comment while I was setting the table. You do a lot around here. More than anyone sees. I laughed it off. But it stuck with me. Then another time, he helped me carry laundry upstairs. I must have looked tired, because he said, "You okay, Camille? You look like you've been carrying more than just this basket." He smiled when he said it. That smile. It wasn't flirty. It was kind. And I realized no one had asked me how I was in a long time. It's strange how quickly silence can become heavy. Our house is quiet most of the time. Not peaceful, just Empty. The kind of quiet that presses on your chest when the sun goes down and you're still sitting alone in the kitchen. I'd wash dishes with my back to the living room, listening to Marcus typing or Darren flipping channels. Sometimes I'd hear them laugh about something. And I'd stand there, hands in soap, heart in knots. Because I wasn't part of it. Any of it. I was just there. Like background noise. But Darren, he started showing up in those quiet moments. Like when I'd be out back watering the plants, he'd lean on the patio door and talk to me about music or memories from when he and Marcus were kids. He told me stories I'd never heard about how Marcus used to sneak him candy when they were little. And I listened. I really listened. It made Marcus feel real again for a moment. It made me feel real. Then there was this one evening. I was in the garage, sorting old boxes, looking for something Marcus asked me to find weeks ago but never mentioned again. The air was dusty. The kind that makes you cough when you move too fast. I was struggling to move a heavy box and Darren walked in. No shirt. Just sweats and a towel over his shoulder. He grinned and said, "You trying to lift that alone?" Before I could answer, he was beside me, arms under the box, lifting like it was nothing. As he set it down, something fell. A photo album. It landed open at our feet. A picture of me from before the kids, before the marriage grew cold. I was laughing in it. Sunlight on my face. Carefree. He picked it up and said, almost too softly, "You used to smile like the sun." I froze. Because he said it like he missed that version of me. And the truth is, I missed her too. That night, I lay in bed next to Marcus. His back to me. Breathing steady. Sound asleep. My body next to him, but my thoughts somewhere else entirely. I didn't feel right. But I didn't feel wrong either. I just felt alive. For the first time in years. And terrified of what that meant. Something had shifted. And I couldn't unfeel it. The next morning was Saturday. The kind of Saturday where everything feels slow and quiet. No alarm clocks. No rushed routines. Just the low hum of stillness and responsibility. Marcus had left early for a last-minute meeting. He barely said goodbye. Just a quick, "Don't forget to check the garage, okay?" Before the door clicked shut behind him. So I slipped on an old sweatshirt, pulled my hair into a knot, and wandered into the garage. That space, it always felt forgotten. Like a room that held memories no one wanted to deal with anymore. Boxes stacked in corners, dusty shelves, a bike with a flat tire that hadn't moved in 2 years. I started pulling things around, trying to find the box Marcus wanted. It was heavier than I expected. I leaned into it, arms straining, breath shallow. And then he appeared. Darren, shirtless again. Just like the day before. He leaned against the doorframe, towel slung across his shoulder, hair still damp. That smirk on his face, the kind that doesn't try too hard because it doesn't need to. "You always do the heavy lifting alone," he said, walking toward me. I laughed under my breath. Someone has to. He didn't wait for me to ask. Just bent down and picked up the box like it was nothing. His skin brushed mine for the briefest second, and I felt it. Not in a sexual way, not yet. But in that jarring way you feel someone when you've gone so long without being touched at all. He carried the box to the side and set it down. But as he pulled away, something slipped out from underneath, a thick, navy blue photo album. It landed with a soft thud. Open. Pages flipped until they settled on one. I saw myself first. Younger. Brighter. In a yellow sundress with my hair flying wild in the wind. Laughing. God. I hadn't seen that version of me in so long. Darren bent to pick it up, but instead of handing it to me, he stared at the photo. And then he said it. "You used to smile like the sun." Just like that. Quiet. No edge. No agenda. But it hit me like a wave. I didn't say anything right away. I just stared at that picture and wondered where that woman went. I couldn't even remember what I was laughing at. Or when I stopped laughing like that. I sat down on an old bench. Dust clouded around me. Darren sat beside me. Too close. We started flipping through the album together. Page by page. Weddings. Vacations. Pregnancies. Birthdays. But what stood out wasn't the events, it was how gone I looked in the recent ones. Present, but not alive. Smiling, but only with my mouth. That carefree glow? Faded. You know, he said, after a pause. You're still beautiful. But it's like you're hiding. I didn't know what to say. No one had called me beautiful in years. And if they had, it was out of habit. Like saying bless you after a sneeze. But Darren, he said it like he meant it. Like he saw me. And maybe that's what started it. Not the compliment. Not the shirtlessness. Not even the photo. But the seeing. Because when someone really sees you after years of being invisible, it does something to you. Something dangerous. He looked at me again. Not like a brother-in-law. Not like someone crashing in the guest room. But like a man. Looking at a woman. And I didn't look away. That silence between us? It wasn't awkward. It was electric. It was a question neither of us dared to ask out loud. And something in me whispered, this is a line. You're standing right on it. But I didn't move. Neither did he. We sat there in that dusty garage, surrounded by forgotten things. But in that moment, I didn't feel forgotten at all. I felt alive. And that was the beginning. That night, I lay beside Marcus, staring at the ceiling. The room was dark, but not quiet. The soft flicker of the television cast shadows on the wall. The distant hum of traffic drifted through the window. His steady breathing beside me should have been comforting. But I didn't feel comforted. I felt hollow. Like I was lying inside a version of my life that looked right from the outside, but inside, it was all unraveling. I kept hearing Darren's voice. You used to smile like the sun. Over and over. I tried to push it away. Told myself it didn't mean anything. That he was just being kind. That I was just tired. That this was all in my head. But the flutter in my chest said otherwise. That flutter, that ridiculous, dangerous flutter, it made me feel 17 and ashamed all at once. I turned slightly, just enough to see Marcus's face lit by the glow of the screen. He didn't even notice I was looking at him. Didn't ask how my day was. Didn't kiss my forehead like he used to. Didn't even shift closer. Just one hand on the remote, the other on his phone. And there I was, wrestling with thoughts I didn't recognize as mine. I told myself I was being dramatic. That all I needed was a good night's sleep. That the feeling would pass. But it didn't. Because it wasn't just that moment in the garage. It was every moment leading up to it. Every dinner eaten in silence. Every night I'd cried quietly into my pillow, hoping Marcus would roll over and ask, "Are you okay?" He never did. So I learned to swallow those tears. Smile through the ache. Stay busy enough not to feel. But that night, lying there, I felt everything. I thought about the woman in that photo. The way she laughed with her whole face. The way her body didn't tense up before someone touched her. The way she believed love meant being chosen every day. I don't know when she disappeared. But I missed her. And Darren. He reminded me of her. That's what scared me the most. It wasn't that he was younger, or that he was my brother-in-law. It was that he saw me when I'd forgotten how to see myself. And God, the guilt it wrapped around me like a second skin. I kept repeating to myself, he's family. What is wrong with you? But the voice that answered back didn't sound ashamed. It sounded sad. Sad that I even had to ask myself that question. Sad that I'd spent years shrinking to fit into a role that left me empty. I turned away from Marcus and pulled the covers tighter. I wanted to reach for him, but I didn't. Because I already knew what would happen. He'd grunt, shift, maybe murmur, "Not tonight," and fall back asleep. That rejection? It cuts deeper the 100th time than the first. So I stayed still. Let the ache settle into my bones. I tried to tell myself Darren didn't mean it. That I'd imagined the look in his eyes. But deep down, I knew. Something shifted that day. And I couldn't pretend it hadn't. The next morning, I got up before the sun, made breakfast, packed lunches, folded laundry. On the outside, I was still Camille, the dependable wife, the loving mom, the good sister-in-law. But inside, I wasn't sure who I was anymore. And maybe that was the scariest part. Because once you start questioning who you've become, it's hard to stop. The days that followed felt strange. Not loud, not dramatic, just different. Like the air around me had shifted in some subtle, invisible way. I kept catching Darren watching me, not in a creepy or obvious way. More like observant, attentive, present. He noticed things no one else had in years. Like when I wore that green dress, simple, nothing special. I'd almost forgotten I had it. Marcus hadn't said a word. But Darren? He walked by me in the hallway, paused, and said, "That color looks good on you." Then kept walking. Didn't wait for a reaction. Didn't make it weird. Just said it and left me standing there with a warm flush creeping up my neck. Another time, I was setting dinner on the table. Darren leaned in slightly and said, "Is that a new perfume?" It wasn't. I'd been wearing the same one for years. But I smiled anyway and nodded. He smiled back, and for a second, it felt like a secret passed between us. I told myself it was harmless, that I was just enjoying the attention, that there was nothing wrong with someone finally seeing me again. But that flutter in my chest? It was growing. One evening, Marcus texted that he'd be working late again. "Don't wait up," he said. He didn't ask how my day was. Didn't say he missed me. Just a line of words on a screen, cold and efficient. I sat alone on the couch, the kids already asleep upstairs, the house quiet in that haunting way it always was at night. And then, there was a knock on my bedroom door. I opened it, half expecting one of the kids, but it was Darren. He stood there, holding a half-full bottle of wine and 2 glasses. "I thought you might want company," he said softly. There was a pause. I could have said no. Should have, maybe. But instead, I stepped aside and let him in. We sat at the edge of my bed, the glasses between us. The wine helped. It softened things, unlocked words that had been gathering dust in my throat. We talked, really talked, about music, about how he always wanted to open a small bar somewhere quiet, just live music and cheap drinks and no expectations. About how I used to paint before the kids, before the house swallowed all my time. He told me about the breakup that brought him to our house. Said he'd stayed in that relationship too long because it felt safer than starting over. And I told him I knew that feeling, all too well. There was a moment, maybe longer than it should have been, where neither of us said anything. He looked at me, eyes soft, searching. And I felt it again. That silent current pulling us somewhere we weren't supposed to go. His hand brushed mine. Just for a second. But it lingered. And I didn't pull away. My heart was pounding in my ears. I kept telling myself to say something, to shift the mood, change the subject, bring things back to normal. But I didn't. Instead, I asked, "Do you ever feel like you disappeared somewhere along the way?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me like he knew, like he'd been carrying the same ache. Then he whispered my name. Not loud, not playful, soft, like it meant something. And in that moment, it didn't sound brotherly. It didn't sound safe. It sounded like an invitation. And I almost took it. Almost. He stood up a moment later, said he should go. I nodded. Said good night like everything was fine. But after he left, I sat there in the silence, glass still full, heart still racing. Something had changed. The air between us had crossed a line, one that wasn't physical yet, but was no less real. And I knew, deep down, that if it happened again, I might not stop it. The sky turned gray just after 5. Heavy clouds rolled in like a warning, and the rain followed quickly, hard and steady. The kind that soaks the earth in minutes and makes the world feel smaller, quieter. Marcus called around 6. He said the storm had flooded a few roads and he was stuck at the office. "Don't wait up," he said again. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Said, "Okay, be safe." He mumbled something that sounded like, "Yeah," then hung up. Just like that. No "I love you." No warmth. Nothing. The lights flickered once. Then again. Then went out completely. The silence was instant. No humming fridge, no background TV, no ticking clocks. Just the soft drumming of rain on the roof and windows, and the distant rumble of thunder. The kids were asleep. I lit a candle and curled up on the living room couch with an old book I'd read a dozen times. Not because I wanted to read, but because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. The flickering flame danced across the walls, casting shadows that felt almost alive. And then, I heard footsteps. Darren. He stepped into the glow like he belonged there. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at me, then the candle, then back at me. His eyes were softer than usual. He looked different in that light. Less playful. More exposed. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. "Power's out," I said, stating the obvious. My voice barely above a whisper. He smiled a little and sat down beside me. Too close. Closer than he ever had before. I should have moved. I should have stood up. I should have said something to change the air in the room. But I didn't. The storm outside was loud. But inside, there was a storm of a different kind. He looked at me, really looked. And it was like everything we hadn't said over the last few weeks was suddenly sitting in the space between us. He reached for the book in my hand. "Still reading this one?" he asked. I nodded again. "It's your comfort book, huh?" I smiled without meaning to. "You remember that?" He nodded. "I remember everything you say." Silence. Heavy. Loaded. Dangerous. I closed the book and set it on the coffee table. My hands were shaking, just a little. I could feel his warmth beside me. And I hated how much I liked it. Finally, I whispered, "We shouldn't." He didn't flinch. Didn't look away. Instead, he leaned in closer. "But you want to," he said. It wasn't a question. And the worst part? He was right. I wanted to be wanted. I wanted to be seen. To be touched like I mattered. To be spoken to like I was more than a placeholder in my own life. I turned my head slightly. Our faces were inches apart. I could feel his breath. And then, it happened. One kiss. It started hesitant. Unsure. Like both of us were waiting for the other to stop it. But no one did. That kiss, it wasn't wild. It wasn't rushed. It was slow. Deep. Filled with every word we'd never said. And from there, everything blurred. It wasn't about lust. It wasn't about revenge. It was about recognition. A cry for something we'd both lost in other people. Something we were desperate to feel again, even if just for one night. We didn't rush. We didn't speak. The candle flickered beside us as if it was watching. The rain outside kept pouring. And somewhere between the silence and the shadows, we crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Later, as we lay side by side in the soft glow of melted wax and unspoken regret, I stared at the ceiling. Just like I had before. Only this time, I wasn't wondering what might happen. This time, I was wondering what I'd just done. But the next morning, I saw something that made my heart drop. The smell of eggs woke me. I sat up slowly, body still aching from the weight of the night before, not just physically, but in the kind of way that lives deep in your bones. The candle had burned out. The room was quiet. Darren was gone. I reached for my robe, heart pounding. I didn't know what to expect. What he'd say. What I'd say. If we'd even say anything at all. I padded down the hall, and that's when I heard it, the sizzle of a pan. Plates clinking. The soft hum of someone moving around the kitchen. I turned the corner. And it was Marcus. Standing there in his work shirt, sleeves rolled up, cooking breakfast. My heart sank. He didn't cook. Ever. He turned when he saw me and smiled like nothing in the world had changed. "Morning," he said. I thought I'd surprise you. I nodded slowly, mouth dry. The room felt too bright, too loud, like the world had gone on spinning, but I was stuck. He gestured to the table. Sit. I made your coffee just how you like it. I sat, numb. He set the plate down in front of me, then poured his own cup. I've been thinking, he said. I'm taking next week off. No laptop. No phone. Just us. I want to. I don't know. Reconnect. I don't know what hurt more, his sudden awareness, or how badly I'd wanted it weeks ago. I forced a smile. That sounds nice. But inside, guilt was clawing at me. I looked down at the eggs on my plate and felt sick. Because while he was making plans to rebuild us, I'd already set fire to everything. Darren walked in moments later. He froze when he saw me, then quickly looked away. Morning, Marcus called out. You hungry? Darren mumbled something. Didn't look at me once. Just grabbed a banana and disappeared back into the hallway. That silence between us, it was deafening. Later that day, I found him out back, leaning against the fence, staring at nothing. I stepped out, quiet. He didn't turn. After a moment, he said, we shouldn't have done that. His voice was low, flat. I nodded, my throat tight. I know. I'm moving out, he added. End of the week. My chest tightened. I should have expected it, but hearing it out loud, it felt like being dropped. He finally looked at me. There was no anger in his eyes. No blame. Just regret. And something else, grief, maybe. Like we'd both lost something we never really had. He pushed off the fence and walked past me without another word. I stood there for a long time, listening to the wind, trying to breathe. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel seen. I felt exposed. Like I was standing in the ruins of a choice I couldn't undo, and no one even knew the disaster had happened but me. There's this park bench near the edge of town. It overlooks a quiet pond, always half-shadowed by trees. You can hear birds sometimes and the occasional bark of a dog in the distance. It's peaceful here. But today, peace feels like a costume I don't quite fit into. I've been coming here a lot lately. Sitting, thinking, not because it helps really, but because I don't know where else to put all of these thoughts. I keep asking myself, was it a mistake or a mirror? Was that night with Darren a collapse of morals, a moment of weakness? Or was it a reflection of everything I've been too afraid to say out loud? Because if I'm honest, I didn't cheat because I stopped loving Marcus. I cheated because I stopped feeling alive. There's a difference. People talk about betrayal like it's always black and white. Like it's always about lust or revenge or cruelty. But what about loneliness? What about that slow ache that builds when your name hasn't been spoken with warmth in years? When your body hasn't been touched without obligation? When your words go unanswered, your smiles unnoticed? Sometimes, the betrayal doesn't start with the kiss. It starts with the absence. With the silence. With the empty dinner tables and the unanswered, "How was your day?" With being invisible in the one place you're supposed to feel most seen. That's where I was. Starving in a house full of food. And Darren, he wasn't a plan. He wasn't a goal. He was just the first person in a long time who looked at me and actually saw me. Not as a mother. Not as a wife. But as a woman. I keep thinking about how quickly it all happened. And how slow it felt in the moment. Like we'd been walking toward that night for weeks. Quietly. Gently. Unknowingly. And now here I am. Back in my marriage. Back in the routines. Back in the silence that somehow feels louder than ever. Marcus still doesn't know. He's been trying. Cooking dinner more. Asking me how I'm doing. Touching my back when he walks by. But it's hard to feel anything when you're carrying a secret in your chest like a ticking clock. And Darren? He moved out 2 weeks ago. No goodbye. Just a box of his things gone from the hallway. A toothbrush missing from the guest bathroom. A silence where laughter used to be. I don't want him back. That's the truth. Whatever happened between us, It wasn't built to last. It wasn't love. But it was something. Something that woke me up. And now, I'm not sure what to do with that awakening. Because the void is still there. Different, but still there. And I've learned something. Visibility is oxygen. And I've been holding my breath for years. Today, as I sit here on this bench, I open my phone without thinking. A message from Darren. 5 words. Do you ever think about that night? I stare at it for a long time. The cursor blinks in the reply box. I type. Erase. Type again. Then my finger hovers over delete. And I do. Or maybe I don't. Maybe I just tell myself I did. Because some choices live in the shadows, long after they've been made. And some questions. They never really leave you. Have you ever found yourself needing something so badly that you reached for it in the wrong place? Not because you wanted to hurt anyone. Not because you stopped caring. But because your heart was starving. And for just one moment, you couldn't bear the ache anymore. If you've ever been there, even for a second, then maybe you understand what I did. Maybe you don't. But either way, I want to know. What would you have done in my place? Would you have told the truth? Would you have stayed quiet? Would you have chosen guilt over being numb? Tell me in the comments. Not for judgment. Not for pity. But for honesty. Because sometimes, the only way we survive our mistakes is by no longer carrying them alone. And if stories like this hit something deep inside you, something raw or hidden or quietly familiar, then like this video. Share it with someone who needs to feel a little less alone. And subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Our next story may just echo a part of you you've tried to forget. They say every choice writes a chapter in your story. But some chapters, you never read out loud. You bury them. Deep. Behind laughter. Behind marriage photos and polite dinners. Behind I'm fine and it was nothing. But they live there. Waiting. I've learned something through all this. Betrayal doesn't always come from someone else. Sometimes, it comes from the version of you that's been neglected for too long. The one that whispers, see me. Please, see me. And when no one does, you listen to the wrong voices. You chase the wrong light. You believe a moment of warmth is worth the wait that follows. If you're lonely, speak. If you're hurting, reach out. Because silence? Silence has a way of seducing you into secrets. And secrets, they change you. I walked past Darren's old room today. I wasn't trying to. But the door was slightly open. Just wide enough to catch my eye. Inside, the bed was made. Clean. Neat. Quiet. But on the edge of it, a box. Closed. With my name written on top.